Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 144, and we equip katana and cannons in Shogun, FX's new period action drama. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen! Welcome back to another episode of Confidently Wrong. I'm pretty excited for this show. Brian, how you doing?
I'm
still
all right.
tired.
How are you? Always tired.
I'm doing great. I'm still on vacation in Galveston. It's been a long vacation.
Wow, you've been
man.
there for like
a
week and a half or
I'm
something.
starting a new life.
Sav, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I cannot complain. I could, but I won't. Life's treating me well.
Are you also on spring break?
Nah, my spring break ain't until the end of the month.
Does City Year do a spring break?
Yeah, but my spring break isn't until
Okay.
the end of the month for Detroit Public Schools. So like the last week of March, I'll have some time off. I'm already going to take I'm going to see if they need me for the first 2 days for some trainings we're doing, but I took the rest of the week off. So I'm going to probably chill at home or do a little mini Michigan trip. But soon my time will... Michigan got so much stuff to see, bro. Like I could spend my whole year traveling and not leave the state. I still got to go to the sand dunes.
There's sand dunes in
There's sand
Michigan?
dunes in North Michigan, about 4 hours north of Detroit. But like I'm talking like I've seen like it looks like you're in the middle of a desert riding ATVs and stuff like sand dunes near the lakes. Sleeping Bear sand dunes, really dope.
The White Leisure Tour continues.
Come on, man. I got my
Look out for the giant worms.
kombucha. I got all that.
Oh my
I learned
God.
my little sand
No,
shuffle.
you got it.
You got the booch? You got booch on tap?
Oh yeah, come on, y'all.
You got to drink that yerba mate out there, bro.
Yeah, the yerba mate.
Really
I got.
the
I
hipster.
told you I got my Patagonia jacket or my North Face jacket, whichever one's more of a stereotype. Yeah, but all that to say, I'm doing well. The Pelicans are doing well. Life is good over
gotta
here.
catch you guys. It's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna catch you guys.
All right. Lakers are just very up and down. I don't know what's going on here, but
They're a
gonna
poorly
talk
constructed
about
team.
Shogun. A new limited series. I don't know if it's limited actually. A new series on FX and Hulu, streaming live right to your screens. We're not really advertising for it. It's just that's how you see it. It's very, very involved. It's dense. It's a political thriller. Sav, you did a little bit of homework, kind of looking into the series before we started recording. So, what did you find?
So, the Shogun miniseries is, first of all, it's based on a 1975 novel of the same name by an Australian author named James Clavell, which interesting fellow because he was a World War II veteran who actually was a Japanese POW for some time. And in the post-war, he actually wrote a lot of books that were clearly drawn from his travels and experiences in Asia. So he has like maybe 6 different books that take place over different time periods in different periods of Asia. All of them usually centering on like an Anglo-Saxon character and their interactions in Asia, usually involving big trading companies and conglomerates, a mix of fictional characters inspired heavily by real-life historical events. So this is based off of source material. And then also there was a 1980 miniseries that was created that actually was apparently very well acclaimed. Like it had been nominated for like awards. I think it was one of the only American shows at the time, or even to date, that was all filmed on site in Japan. So Shogun actually has a pretty decent amount of history and things going in. Like I said, previous series based off a successful book series, based off an author, and it was based off his experiences. Yeah, Wes. Brian. Oh God.
Was there anybody in that miniseries that we know or recognize? I'd never heard that there was a previous series.
Me neither until I started doing my homework. So unless you know, does the name Richard Chamberlain mean anything
like it's
to
like
you?
a young George Clooney or something?
Does anybody know who Richard Chamberlain?
Nope.
Is that Wilt's son?
No. This is like a white guy. And then it seems like it's a pretty solid cast. But
you got me.
It's a solid cast, but a lot of the characters seem to be like either British or Japanese, and I'm personally not very familiar. But again,
they didn't
yeah,
yellow
this
face
James
the Japanese
Clavel
characters.
guy.
What's up?
They didn't yellow face any.
Not
of the
that I
Japanese
can tell.
characters.
No.
But-
In fact, it says.
but once
in fact,
you watch
it says
it-
only 3 of the Japanese actors spoke English in the entire production. So like this was.
Oh,
so
I did
this
read
was
something
like
about
this was this wasn't a poorly put together show. Like they had apparently the show had a lot of taboos that were broken for American television, including language, characters dying, deaths, beheading. Like there's a lot of, the show apparently pushed a lot of boundaries. So it seems like this 1980 series was made with a lot of care and effort put in, not just like a cash grab. And the author was actually an executive producer on the show, so I think he also played a key role in keeping, what made the series good and the authenticity.
I read that in that miniseries, there is a lot of Japanese dialogue, but none of it is subtitled. Like it just happens, and I think maybe it's supposed to be like, okay, like the white protagonist doesn't know what they're saying, but 2, also because white American audiences don't give a damn.
So Brian,
they're not.
So Brian,
like,
you love this. The Japanese characters speak. I'm reading this from about the website, a link about the show. Japanese characters speak in Japanese throughout, except when translating for Blackthorn, the English character. The original broadcast did not use subtitles for the Japanese dialogue. As the movie was presented from Blackthorn's point of view, producers felt that what he doesn't understand, we shouldn't understand. So even with the original series, the dialogue translation piece was done very intentionally for immersion purposes. So honestly, just the background about the original miniseries makes it kind of seem like something I want to check out, because for an 80s series, they really seem to have gone all out on having a very well-produced, thoughtfully made, authentic show, which you wouldn't expect in the 80s for a show, that's about Japan and filmed in Japan.
Won't see Dune 2 or Into the Spider-Verse, but we'll go back and see this unknown 80s series.
I saw Spider-Verse years ago. Get off my back. Anyways, yeah.
It only took you like 6 years to see it, though.
Yeah, after it came out.
Anyways,
can I tell you what my knowledge of Shogun is?
Yes, please.
I think you'll enjoy this story. So, like, at the height of the pandemic, I was spending a lot of time with my mom, and out of nowhere, she's like, oh, there was this show that I remember from the 80s called Shogun. I really want to watch it. And so she like goes out of her way to like find a DVD version of the series. And then she gets in and she's like, oh no, we got to get a DVD player so that I can watch this thing. And like, so that's a whole nother ordeal. We got, she's got to order one. We got to buy one. We got to figure out how to even set up a DVD player in the house and whatever. And she, she watches it and she's into it. And then we're like asking her, like, where did this even come from? Like, why were you even thinking about this show? And she's kind of like, oh, so-and-so told me about it. And I started remembering it and I just want to watch it again. And the so-and-so person is my mom's special friend, as we'll call him, who just happens to be like, another white guy who surrounds himself with, let's call them Asian women, including my mom. And like, what do you know? He brings up the show that's about an Asian guy or a white guy in Asia, written by another white guy who writes about white guys in Asia. What's next? A cop eating a donut? Like, I don't
know. Brian is in hell right now.
Boy, I'm about to be old.
But here we are.
Old man dinner.
Here we are, 2024, talking about the new
insert
version.
Asian dish. Brian, have you ever had obvious Asian dish that you probably had? It's really good. It's really good. I don't know any immediate Filipino food that I can think of. Sorry. Oh,
Adobo. We had adobo.
But yeah.
It's
But yeah, that's a
very
little
good.
backstory on that. That's a little
FYI.
backstory. But Brian, you want to help explain the premise of the show for our folks who just don't know Diddley Squad?
Yeah. So, okay. So, at least in this version, this incarnation of Shogun 2024, which we do get tons of subtitles. Yes, Wesley, there are subtitles in the show. Who listeners, I need to call out Wes for this, who texted us a couple days ago complaining that there were so many subtitles.
I didn't
and that
complain.
meant
I was
that
just
he
I was
could
just
not
telling
do
them.
other things while watching
That came
the
off
show.
like a
I was
complaint, big
telling
dog.
them.
That felt like a complaint.
I was informing. No, I was just letting you know.
Informing us who have already seen it. Yeah.
I
thanks.
thought you guys hadn't seen it yet. I was just telling you so that like you didn't plan like, oh, I'm gonna do this while I'm doing some work tomorrow. Cause yeah, I was trying to do some work and I was like, this ain't working. 90% of this is in Japanese and it's subtitled, so like you really can't be doing
You
other
shouldn't
things
do that.
while
You
you're doing
shouldn't
it.
do
You
that
gotta-
for any
you gotta
show.
lock in.
Yeah, why are we doing our homework and watching shows and movies to talk about on this podcast that you are barely even watching? You just
I am
outed
watching.
yourself, bro. You're like doing 5 other things. No wonder you never remember anything.
You can't
that
openly
happened
talk
in
about
these
your
things.
poor information retention and then also actively talk about how you try to multitask for a show that has subtitles that is even harder. But even I couldn't multitask and watch a sitcom without missing stuff. So I don't know how the hell you do it for a
Yes,
show
you
like
could.
this. I think people who
Sitcom for
people
sure.
who do that either seen the show already or they just need something on in the background and can't admit that they're just not actually watching the show, which is okay, but let's not lie to ourselves and say, oh yeah, I was watching this show. No, you needed background noise while you did other stuff. If you just needed background noise while
Well-
you scrolled your Instagram reels, just say it, Wes.
Listeners,
But don't say I'm watching this show.
is a reading heavy show, let me tell you.
Oh my god.
Not to its detriment.
That boy Wes said, if I wanted to read the
there's not a
book,
problem with it.
Reading heavy,
Yeah.
it's not scrolling text on screen. It's not like you're reading like
The Star Wars
the
scroll.
actual novel. Yeah, in Star Wars, like scrolling text. No, it's something like, come on, our listeners watch anime. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely certain of it.
They're gonna be fine
It's
with it.
fine. It's
I'm just
people
telling you.
talking. That's what it is. People
I'm not-
talking.
There's nothing wrong with it.
But
It was
I
great.
will say, so like what's important to note that we are now drawing a very clear distinction between the original 1980 series and this new Hulu version, which, by the way, I think is the most expensive show FX has ever made.
Really?
It's clear they're pouring lots of money into this
Yeah.
thing. And so, as mentioned before, we have basically the show kicks off with the character Blackthorn, an Englishman, pirate / merchant. A little bit unclear to me what exactly he is, but anyway, his ship is trying to get to Japan for trade. They're dying of starvation. They finally arrive and they're not greeted very warmly or welcomely. And so this dude Blackthorn and the remainder of his crew get taken hostage. And so so he has quite an experience, right, of being foreigner in a place that is foreign to him. That is one aspect of the story, and I think that's where Shogun really takes off, is that though it kicks off with that guy, I believe he is not fully the center of the universe of this story. Really, where all the reading comes from is from the other side of it, which is that after the death of the emperor, now Japan is ruled by, what is it, 4 or 5 regents?
Yeah.
5 regents, right? And when Blackthorn arrives is a point
they're
in time
waiting-
when
Oh, sorry. They're waiting for the
they're
emperor's
waiting
son,
for
right?
the son of the emperor to become of age to rule the
Yeah.
country. So they have these 5 regents ruling in his stead. And what is happening in the midst of, Blackthorn arriving in Japan is that 4 of the regents have now colluded to basically oust one of the 5th regents, who's Toranaga. Toranaga? I can't
I think
remember
Toranaga.
the exact
I'll look it
names.
up.
I don't have
You
it
keep
open in
going.
front of me.
Oh, so
And
now
so-
who can't keep people straight? Oh, okay.
I'm bad with names. That's a different thing. So now we have all
Sure
this
did remember
political
Daenerys.
intrigue. Yeah, after 8 seasons, buddy. And anyway, we have this political intrigue between rival powers in Japan, trying to take some away from one another. The main guy, who I call Dogen. That's how I remember him, because he's Dogen from Lost. Toranaga or whatever his name is.
It's Yoshi Toranaga, and it's played by
Toranaga.
the character is Hiroyuki Sanada. That's the actor's name.
So, and you might also recognize him from the MCU. He appears very briefly at the end of the Blade of Hawkeye. Anyway, so he's the regent who's being basically ousted, right? And so they have him under lockdown, and he needs to find a way to survive, but also launch his counteroffensive. Essentially,
It's like a pretend, like invite, like they're pretend hosting him.
Oh yeah,
There's such a weird.
Yeah.
It's such a weird. Like everyone says, like you're here as our guest, but really you're there as their prisoner. Which I really love about like how they do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So there's clearly in the court and in this period in Japan, there's a lot of sort of like performative politeness.
It's very
that is
performative.
happening,
Oh my
Yeah.
Between people, and so like a big part of the show is the subtext underneath all of that, where they just have daggers out at everybody while they're saying these niceties.
Yeah. They're like, you are just so wise in your decision making. And it's really like you're an idiot.
Yeah, you're gonna end up dead.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the political mix, and of course, Blackthorn, as well as the Portuguese religious authorities, as well as like other Portuguese merchants who are already in Japan, get ensnared into this overarching, political thriller that's happening at the highest levels of Japan, and that's where the show is taken off from.
It's a good place to start. There's a lot of like intense relationship building and relationship establishing that happens in those first episodes. So we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes because that's all that's been released at this point. So we are doing spoilers for that, but we won't do spoilers for the entire series, obviously.
Not all.
Been released. All right, so there's a huge cast, like Brian said. You got all these people in like these different factions in the houses in Japan. You have the Jesuits or the priests who are also exerting their political power. You have the English sailors, pirates, merchants, whatever they are, that are trying to find the East here. And there's just a ton that's going on. What have you sort of latched on to? What really are you enjoying about the storylines here, Sav?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess what am I liking about the storylines? To Brian's point, one of the strongest parts of this show is the subtext within the subtext within the subtext. This is a show where people are at each other's throats, they're threatening each other, but it's all happening. Yeah, you have to read between the lines for everything. You have to hear the Japanese and read the subtitles, and then between those subtitles, read the facial expressions and what's happening around you, and try and figure out who doesn't like who's trying to screw over who. So just that entire like Game of Thrones vibe of just you're filling out all the groups. Although I think unlike Thrones, these groups are somehow even less likable as a collective. Like, I don't really like anybody, which maybe is my biggest critique, is that they're all engaging and intriguing. Nobody's particularly likable. That's not necessarily a bad thing because you don't have to like everybody, but it makes it harder to root
I would
for.
disagree.
But I'm just liking all the various factions, their various things they want. There's characters where one moment I'm like, oh, what a jerk. And then another moment I'm like, oh, you're not that bad. And then back to, oh, you're kind of a jerk. So I'm I'm enjoying that Game of Thrones feel, but more grounded in actual real life history element of the show. That's what's got me hyped up. Like, I'm excited to see how that plays out. It almost feels like a more mature version and grounded version of what we were seeing in Blue Eye Samurai, where there's these themes of foreigners and cultural clashes and the relationship between Japan and Europe and religion and all that good stuff. But then the very nature of that conflict invites people wanting different things. Who's going to leverage the outsiders as a means to gain power? Who is ultimately in it for themselves? Who's trying to, like, you know, just all of that playing out has been really, like, basically when there's that old guy who's like the priest in the cell with Blackthorn, who's basically just saying, you don't know their games, the rules are too opaque, all of this. I love that little spiel because it really sets up the tone of just everybody's interactions in the show and everyone trying to screw each other over with a smile on your face and a dagger in your robe, literally and figuratively.
Brian.
Yeah, I co-sign all of that. You know, it's very, very Game of Thrones-esque, right? You know, figuring out who the houses are, who are the players, what everybody's agenda is, shifting agendas, you know, lying and deceit, right? Smiling while, you know, really being at somebody's throat. I think that's all here. You know, it's teeming with that sort of thing, which makes it exciting. The one thing I do want to throw in though is the whole white guy in a foreign land situation, and knowing, you know, who wrote this book and how it was portrayed before. The whole, you know, this, like, basically like Tom Hardy wannabe, whoever is playing the British guy. You know, that whole storyline.
Cosmo Jarvis, that's his name. His name is Cosmo.
Is his name really Cosmo Jarvis?
Cosmo Jarvis. That's got to be a stage name.
Out of like some like 1960s sci-fi comic book, Cosmo Jarvis.
Yes.
Anyway, so Cosmo, like his character being enmeshed in what is going on politically, you know, is kind of interesting, but at the same time, like, I can't help but watch it and just like think of Tom Cruise as the Last Samurai, you know, or Dances with Wolves or whatever. It's just like, you know, white guy amongst Japanese people, and he's gonna have this thing where he's like, oh, this is what we do as British people, and what the way that you do it is maybe not so great, and that whole thing. And then of course, you know, his translator, Lady Mariko, or I think the Portuguese call her Maria, actually, you know, them telegraphing like, okay, there's probably going to be a romance here between this guy and his lady translator, whose husband, you know, a warrior, just got, you know, murdered, trying to protect his lord, and of course the Tom Hardy dude is going to step into it. So that sort of aspect of the show kind of makes me side eye a little bit. But you know, I do think for the most part though, they're handling it as best as they can, you know, and especially by giving so much full life to all the other Japanese characters who have their own agendas and are propelling things forward, as the show progresses. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on. I got my eye on you, Hardy. Cosmo.
Cosmo. Yeah, you can totally do that, Sav. I wanted to kind of respond to what Sav said though. Like, I agree totally with what he was talking about, like the political intrigue stuff that I really actually am enjoying quite a bit. And so all that stuff, I think what he was saying was like spot on. The part that I would like totally disagree on is that he was saying he didn't think that there's any like likable characters. I actually do think there's likable characters. I really enjoyed like the Rodriguez character, the Spaniard. Like, what a hoot.
Also from Lost.
Is he from Lost?
Yeah,
He
Nestor
just seemed
Carbonell.
like cool. He was just kind of like, okay, well, if you want to die, like you can die here, or you can die there, but like come with me because we're going over here, and I need you here. And I don't know. He was
Great
just sort of kind of
Wes. Great accent.
just kind of a goofy dude.
Spot on.
Yeah. Hey, I'm
Wow.
nothing but people call me a mimic. We can hear you now. Yeah. So
Lovely.
and I liked him. I like Torunaga's character. I think he's like his ability to kind of mastermind the situation, right? He's sort of open to what could happen, right? He's just sort of like, we got to wait till like the next thing plays out. We're just going to keep like going, but he's also like one step ahead. He's not just passively waiting for things to happen. He's got his feelers out. He's using his like spy network or his intelligence network. He's a good leader of people, right? He like inspires them, reinforces like their goodwill or inspires their goodwill. He's trying to train his son in the ways of sort of these political dark arts as well. So I think there's just like a lot to his character. He's sensitive in some ways, right? Like he's able to understand like other people in his orbit, especially women in his orbit. He's not just like, do what I say or else. We've seen characters like that in the show. So I mean, I think there are a ton of likable characters. I do like the main woman's character. I think her name is Mariko in the show. She's like captivating to watch. And then the moment actually that I think, or the moments,
Yeah,
that
we
have
know
been-
why, Wes. We know why.
she's cute. I don't think there's any bones about that. Weird haircut. Not necessarily the haircut I would go for, but whatever. It doesn't matter. But the scenes that have hit me kind of like the hardest, well, there's two types. One is actually the parts where they've shown the mom of the baby that ended up getting sacrificed, both
Ooh.
before and after. Like that's so rough, and I think it's so important for the show to like sit there with those things about like these are not necessarily like what like Sad was saying, like good people. They're willing to do this performative situation or performative stuff, even if it means killing a baby, even if it means killing a man who didn't do necessarily anything like that, quote unquote, wrong. But in their society, like what he did was like really wrong, right? Like he spoke out against an elder, a leader, or whatever, and insulted him basically, and openly, which in I guess this era of Japan is like, met with death. And someone even says like the only punishment they know is death. Like that's once you do something wrong, like it's such an affront that you actually are sentenced to die. And in their case, they sentenced the baby to die as well. And so like, there's all these like the stakes are, I think, real, or they're heightened by that moment, and the actors do such a good job making you believe like how heartbreaking this is and how hard it is to go through this situation. And even someone tries to comfort her, but like comforts her by saying like, this is your duty, right? Like this is the thing that you're gonna get through this, and whatever. And just like, I don't know, a really weird situation to be in because of like the rules of that society, I guess. And then Blackthorn, well, I think he's got a lot of rough edges in terms of an actor. His character is written pretty cool. Like he's trying to like just get by any way he can, because there's several moments where you're like, man, this dude's about to die, and then he kind of like wiggles his way to a different understanding, or like makes a relationship with somebody that saves his life, and like he's getting a little bit lucky, he's doing a little bit on his own. So I mean, I do think there's some parts of him that I'm just like, oh, like this is fun to watch him like try and like navigate the society. He has no idea what's going on. Which like for us as a viewer, we kind of also have no idea what's going on in society. We're not familiar with like the rules and engagements and the norms of this time period. And so we're just trying to figure out along with him, like, how do you survive in this world? Like what is actually the tokens of power? And so I think like it's fun to watch him, for me at least, it's fun to watch him sort of navigate these really tricky situations. In the same way that Toranaga is navigating his really, really tough political situations kind of expertly so far, but we're only 3 episodes in, so we'll see if that ends up being true for the whole series.
And one character that you didn't mention, who I strongly believe is in the very likable category, is Toranaga's like 3rd, 4th tier dude who found Blackthorn initially.
Oh yeah.
I think his name is Yobu or something.
Yoshi
like that.
Nage Yobu.
And
Yabushige.
he's the guy. he's the guy playing both sides, right? He is playing
Yeah.
both with
Ishido.
Torinaga. He's
Mhm.
also friends with Ishido, so willing to do stuff for him. Playing with Blackthorn. He's a guy that's just looking to climb the ladder, a la Littlefinger. And we don't know where his shifting loyalties are, but clearly he's willing to do what it takes to lie and get his way. But also in a moment in episode 3, he's also called out on what he's doing. So it remains
That's
to
the dude
be
with the beard
seen.
and long hair who was gonna kill himself off the side of the cliff.
Yes, him.
Yeah, what a jerk. Isn't a guy who's like wanted people to die because he wanted to see them at the moment of death or some like weird.
Oh yeah.
Some real sick.
He's
I was just like,
he's-
what
he-
the hell
he's-
is this man?
He's taking notes about like how people die because he's trying to observe, what sort of
Oh, I forgot about that.
words come out of their mouth. He's also the guy who
Yeah, not likable, Brian. Sorry. Disagree.
watches a prostitute hook up with one of his men in front of him. I think it's just interesting. Okay, maybe not likable, but
Interesting.
That's how I feel about.
That's like a great character to have.
No, that's my summary of most of the cast is that everybody is interesting. I don't think I like anybody though. Like the closest person was maybe the Spaniard dude, and even him I was like, okay, cool. And then once, he's probably the closest thing, but even then, he's funny. He's not necessarily likable. And Blackthorn, I feel the same. He's interesting. Likable. I think, he's funny, but I don't know if like he has like some kind of compelling moral quandary or story that is like, I'm rooting for you is more of just you're fun to see on screen, which is still completely fine. But again, I'm not rooting for anybody. Like even Blackthorn, he's interesting, but and as much
I don't
as
care if I see him die.
Yeah, actually. and while teenage me can relate to a guy in a place being angry at Catholicism, and like while there's a certain part of me that resonates with his like rage towards the Catholics, like this dude is still someone who was going to raid and pillage and burn and destroy. So it's hard for me to really feel super bad for him in the context of his situation because he has no power and is in a position of kind of just being a political pawn, but it's like, dude, you're not sympathetic enough for me to feel bad for you being a political pawn. So am I interested in your journey and want to see how it plays out? Yes. Am I rooting for you to win? No. I just want to see where the chips may fall, which is really how I feel about the entire plot. Outside of who's the man who's possibly getting deposed? Is it Tora? Help me with
Torinaga.
Thank you. Torinaga.
Yeah, come on, you're not rooting for him?
No, I like him. He's cool because he's a blend of he's a blend of very well acted and cool character, and I like how he plays the political machinations of the game, but not in like a really cruel, bloodthirsty way, at least for now, right?
And he's the most honorable, right? Because he's the one actually protecting the heir, at least from what we understand.
Yeah. But I also sense that this is going to be like I just hope they don't pull a Ned Stark where, oh, this character is so honorable and likable, he never stood a chance in a show like this. And that's an easy way for them to pull the heartstrings is to kill the honorable, likable character to let you know, like, hey, all that nice shit, we don't play that in these parts. Like, this is war. But that's not a knock on the show. Although one thing I do want to highlight that I really liked, because I think my sound was acting funky and I might have missed this. Let me know if y'all talked about it already. One of my favorite parts of this show, and it ties to the original one of how language, and they really lean into the language barriers of the show. Like lots of media play language barriers fast and loose, right? Like we've talked about how in lots of sci-fi space productions, people go to alien planets and all the other aliens look like humans who speak English. Like no one questions why the Viltrumites look like humans who speak English,
or why they all have mustaches.
but I'm really liking how this show really leans into the logistics of, we don't understand what this person is saying, so our decisions and interaction with them are going to be based heavily around translations, and even the unreliable translator is something that comes up like 3-4 different times, and how it plays out is different each time, because one time you have a legitimately faulty translator who ultimately, even though he's falsely translating, he was right. Like he's saying kill him because he's a pirate, and it's like, okay, you're lying about the translation, but not about the thing you're actually saying. But that's really cool to see. And then you as a viewer don't know that yet. You don't know that he was actually like lying and they're not really merchants, or like what their true mission was. So like seeing scenes like that. But then you have a scene where you have the translator from the church, but then Mariko also as like a translator insurance policy, and just how that, like all of that, just like that's just so, to me, that's just really thoughtful writing. That's them really thinking about, how are these characters who have vested interest in each other and need each other and all of this communicate truthfully when there's such a huge language barrier. And even in that scene where Blackthorn's getting interrogated by, is it Toranaga? Toranaga. Sorry, I'm struggling with names today. With Toranaga, there's a point where at first it starts off slow, right?
At the beginning of the show, I'm putting out that part of the show. I'm gonna put it at the end of the show. Listeners, stay tuned.
It doesn't change anything that I said.
Got jumped on for saying things that were real faulty human, things, American perspectives, and then now these two gentlemen cannot think of the names at all.
I'm not a names person. Names are hard, man.
Calling the pot.
Names are hard.
The pot called the kettle black. I'm sorry. You had no room to stand on there.
And you would call the whole pan set black. Anyways, but the best part of that translation scene was the point where they start editing it in a way where the translators aren't even translating anymore, although they are. It's just it's almost like they're talking back and forth to each other, right? So you got your boy talking to him in Japanese, Blackthorn responding in English, and you know that the translation is happening, but the way they picked up the pace to where now it looks like they're just talking was a masterclass in editing and filming. I don't know what the film terms are, Brian, but they were doing good film stuff really well. And I was like, ooh, I don't know what
the textbook language you're using there.
Yeah, I don't have the language to describe how I like this, but I like it.
Well, it makes sense in that scene because they established that he was going to translate everything exactly as he was saying. So then you didn't need it anymore, right? Because we have this distrust of them at first, but then they established he's like, no, bro, you're going to hang yourself. I don't have to do anything here to put my finger on the scales here. You're going to say all the wrong things and it's going to be totally okay for me. I don't have to make up anything for you. So yeah, I'm just going to translate this exactly what you're saying because you're going to be an idiot here. You don't understand how any of this works.
Yeah, but that was just good filming, straight up. It was just good cinematography, because you could have done that scene a million ways and made the same point, but not did it in such a quality way. Even scenes where they use again, I don't know what the camera is, but the camera looks like it's swirly on the outside edges of the screen.
Vignetting.
Yes, did y'all see that happening? Where the dude, it was almost like the dudes looked drunk and disoriented, but they did a good job of just making you feel like, man, homeboy is just on full tilt right now. They're moving him from place to place. Blackthorn, that is. You don't know what the hell's going on. And there are moments where they did a great job of actually making the on-screen camera shaky and dizzy, like you're hungover or seasick. And I don't know. I've noticed that they do a lot of little things like that visually draw me into the show more too. And again, it's a sign to me of just good production value and care. They didn't just throw this together haphazardly. They really said, we're going all out for every scene, every frame. So I guess I'm just talking up the production value of the show, which is very high, and it speaks to the budget.
Yeah, Brian, you understand film. Are you agreeing with that? Filmmaking.
Yeah, you got the award. Yeah, the award-winning director. I'm just a peon, a goon, a plebe.
Well, definitely the production budget is showing its sleeve throughout this series. I don't know if so you know what I mean.
It's sleeve.
If you guys watch the behind the scenes featurettes, there are a couple of them on Hulu. I highly recommend watching them because it just gives you a peek into what they did to achieve such kind of historical accuracy that is on display throughout the episodes. They even have experts on set at just body language and gestures from 1600s Japan. People who have studied this and talking about, well, here's how people would sit in a meeting, how they would handle papers, how they might handle objects and present objects to people. And all of that is very specific to, the setting, what is being communicated to other people in that society. And then, those languages and codes vary based on your station in that world. And I think all of that, comes into play very well. And kind of what you're saying, Savon, too, like in terms of how they filmed it, right? They talk about how this is the largest Japanese production TV show that most of these Japanese actors have ever been a part of. Right. And so they're able to do camera moves, film things in certain ways that they had never been able to do for, Japanese historical drama before. Plus the costuming, is very, very ornate, very detailed, very specific to each house and who wears it. However, and they don't do things like color code it so clearly for the audience, because I think they're going more for authenticity than even,
Readability.
hand-holdy legibility.
It's how real life is, right? Like the villains aren't always wearing big color that says I'm the bad guy. And
Right.
even amongst the action, and even amongst these actual factions, there's a lot of shades of gray. And I'm sure as the episodes continue, there's probably going to be lots of shades of gray in people's motivations.
Yeah.
Like that. Like what about the guy who's one of the regent folks who he's Japanese, but he's loyal to the Christian religion, but only out of the money side of it. And it's like, hey, that's someone who clearly isn't really loyal to their cause. So what's going to happen with them? Like, do they decide to actually side with the Portuguese once they learn that they're trying to mount and take over? Or are they going to go a different direction? Like, there's a lot of character stuff going on. It's to your point. It's a good thing that they're not just doing obvious colors, because you as the viewer kind of need to be able to listen and infer yourself. Hey, who's trustworthy? Who's not? Who could do a heel turn at a moment's notice? And okay, cool, it's not color coded. That's ambiguous to you. Imagine how it is for the people actually out there in the world. Like, imagine how a regular peasant feels. They probably don't know the difference between all these different factions and who has their best interests at heart. So I do like that, to where it makes you as a viewer have to be paying attention to the little things around you. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to properly keep up with the factions, which honestly is very accurate to what John Blackthorne's experience is. Like, oh shit, man, I don't know none of these people, none of their customs, none of their culture. What the hell is going on? I'm trying to keep up so that I don't, like, in that sense, I actually can relate to him, because I'm also like, dude, I'm figuring this shit out too.
Yeah,
Like,
the
I
show's
don't-
like demanding to interpret it, right? And you can't just be doom scrolling while you're watching it.
Yeah, you gotta really be taking in things, and but it's appreciative, and again, I think it's a sign that they have respect for the viewer, because if you can come to these conclusions your own, it just makes the reveal of the story that much more satisfying.
So it is a little bit hard to keep some of the characters and factions straight. I see. Okay. I see you, Savon.
Not for the reason that you presented.
but not because they're all Japanese, which
I
is
mean,
the
it's
biggest
just hard.
difference.
Not just because they're Japanese, but a little bit because it's just.
You hear what he's saying, y'all?
It's-
Not just
it's not-
because.
Oh my god.
That was never
You are
a reason
definitely
why.
attributing it to
Yeah, you are
them
not
being
helping.
Japanese.
Yeah, like my biggest challenge isn't them being honestly, my biggest challenge more so is I say the language barrier is the biggest challenge for me.
That's part of them being
because-
Japanese.
No, it's not. Because
It
this
is.
is an
They're
all
speaking
English.
Japanese.
No, yeah, but I think for me at least that makes like for me voice, tone, accent, you saying names and all that is a part of me remembering stuff. And if it's a language and just tone and stuff that I don't recognize the same way,
Oh my God.
that makes it harder. Like 100%, if they were all speaking like American English, it'd be easier to tell folks apart just because I recognize in different English voices. But that's not because they're Japanese. They could be-
That's part of it. That is part of the whole
It's
thing.
the language, not how they look. Brian, you get exactly what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's keep
We
it
are
moving
not
then.
attuned to the nuances of the language.
Yeah.
Wes, you're saying you couldn't tell them apart visually. That's very different.
that
Yeah,
that
I
didn't
can
help.
tell everybody. I can tell everybody apart from how they look. Just it's like
Yeah,
it's just
but
names and
It's
stuff
not
don't flow
always
as
clear,
easily,
like,
and voices
oh,
aren't
okay,
as
that
recognizable.
person, where did we see them before? Like, your memory having to recall them is just harder because of like the way that they dress them, because of, like you said, because of the language barriers. Like, all of that is legitimate challenges, especially to an American audience, to like trying to figure out where everybody is at first. I think
just don't box me in with you. Just don't put me in the same camp as you. I don't want people thinking. Look, Brian, let's just make sure we separate ourselves.
Oh my god!
Nah, do not integrate me into that. No, do not include me in that shit.
And then I think it gets much easier, or like by the time you get to the end of the second episode, I think it's absolutely like, oh, okay, I got it. I know where everybody's at. I know who's going where, and like you're kind of clear about the factions and stuff. I think it's just in the beginning, there's just a lot of moving pieces and a lot of people all at once. Were there any things that either of you found maybe like weren't just you didn't enjoy, or like things that didn't work for you? The only thing that I like can remember in the third episode, what is his name? Blackthorn, the main kind of pirate guy. He has this little like soliloquy or monologue about the horizon calling him, and then like the freedom that it represents and stuff. And like the way that it got delivered and the moment in which it got delivered, I didn't relate to that at all. I was like, that just feels really out of place and not like, I don't know. It just kind of seemed like goofy and corny in a moment that didn't need all of that corny language or like prolific language. And he's not someone who's been up to this point, using metaphor and rhetorical language and stuff. And all of a sudden he's like, the horizon, it's much like freedom, and you're like, whoa.
The end of episode 3 is a little suspect.
Like,
for that reason and others. And the diving scene,
I didn't get that at all.
They have just survived, what was near certain death, and then all of a sudden they're having some like really like corny, happy exchanges, including that soliloquy that you mentioned, and then Toranaga making Blackthorn dive over and over and over.
Yeah, I didn't understand what character
because he wanted to learn diving. Like, hopefully they pay that off later. But in the moment, it's
a random
was
request.
Kind of a head scratcher. It's like, what are we?
Okay,
what are we
so
supposed to
you
get
bumped
out
up
of
against
this?
that too. Yeah, I was like, I mean, like, I think you could have made that work, like as like, oh, this is them building their relationship, or now they trust each other. But then they just like made this whole thing about how he made him jump over and over again, and then he was like saying, I need to learn, but then he did it at the end. So like it was
like
seeing...
They were gonna like hug and kiss too. It was like the tone of that scene was also off. Like at first it made you think like, oh, Toranaga is just like messing with this guy. Yeah, exactly. But
then it was genuine.
He wants to learn to dive.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what we were supposed to learn.
And now they're both in their undies and they're gonna swim in unison to the shore.
It was confusing.
I don't know.
And then they were like, don't let him win. And he was like, I would never. And you're like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. Sav, did you bump up against anything?
No, nothing in particular. It's just too early for me to decide, oh, I definitively don't like this thing. I just want to continue to see how are they going to characterize this cast, and who do the directors and all of them want you to be rooting for, if anybody. I'm curious to see how they're going to present characters to kind of nudge you to, hey, you should actually probably be liking this character, not liking this one. Because I'm curious if this is a you don't have to like anybody, just enjoy the larger story, or it's you actually kind of want to be rooting for this character a little bit more than others. Like, I'm very curious about that because, again, not a very likable cast, even if they're all very interesting.
Brian, you seem to be anti-Blackthorn and Cosmo.
I mean,
I don't really rock with Blackthorn.
I'm just like anti that storyline. It seems like a cliche, especially if he's gonna end up with Lady Mariko ultimately, or at least like hooking up.
Oh, you mean white guy shows up?
Point to absolutely.
Oh yeah, he gonna holler.
Yeah, it's like, come on, like, do we need that? Do we need to do that?
Gonna make her hate the Catholics.
And they make her. I think they do make her out to be, like very attractive, like the beautiful woman on screen, and this is the role that she plays.
Oh yeah, she bad.
Yeah, like
oh yeah, she's bad.
Just meant to be this guy's fantasy hookup in the foreign land. So I'm not feeling that part of the show. Like we don't need that.
You don't think it's gonna?
Yeah, the funniest part. Yeah, the funniest part is that, like, yeah, the weakest part, honestly, is just the and we'll see how weak it is. And it's based off historical events. So I don't want to call it a true cliche because this is like, Blackthorn's based off a real historical figure who was in
Did
Japan.
you really hook up with his translator?
I don't know about all that. I'm talking more about the just like he was in Japan as this white guy and rose into like, a position of relative political power, intrigue, whatever, historically. But like that's probably the weakest part is just, well, I don't know. We'll just see if this turns into a white guy goes to Japan and becomes a badass. We'll see to what extent they balance that because so far they've made it to where he has some skills and traits, but like it's not like he's very much getting screwed over, right? Like he's literally getting dragged prison to prison, literally pissed on, all this other stuff. So we'll see if they decide to just suddenly turn him into a badass who learns how to navigate all of the Japanese political drama, or if they ground him a little bit more. Again, that's one of those, I'll be judging them on how that goes because that'll weigh on how I see the collective show.
All right. We are only 3 episodes in. Do you guys know how many are there going to be? Is there going to be 10?
I think it's 10.
It's 10.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and it's a limited series, so like it's over, I'm pretty sure, because it's a book and it's like not a hard sequel. So
this is limited series. They're not trying to do season 2.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think they say limited series.
Okay.
Yeah, because the novel, I think, is just like, it's not like it's a novel and then, there's a sequel. The books take place in a shared universe, but not in a way where you would have these same characters returning for more, So assuming they don't end it in this one run, this should be it.
All right. So in the next, or as the series continues on, what are you hoping to see? What do you want to learn more about? For me, and obviously this is where a lot of this is going to go, is like, how does Toranaga like navigate this whole thing? Does he end up gaining power? Does he end up losing it? Like, how does he end up using Blackthorn's particular knowledge and skills to actually move forward? I mean, at the end, they sort of make it clear to the viewer that like he's going to be put into this position of like trying to train on battle tactics, but he doesn't really know anything about battle tactics. So like, how is he going to actually take that and either learn about them, or is he going to just like take that to his advantage and leverage it in some other way? So, I mean, I think the main plot line for me is what I'm most interested in, to see how the 4 other regions now deal with Toranaga, sort of clawing back some of the power that it seemed like he didn't have. They thought they had him cornered and he kind of wriggled his way out of it, which is a testament to his character, right? And how deftly he's sort of maneuvered himself here, with some good fortune. Obviously, there was some good luck there, but that's the part I want to see moving forward more about than I want to see like any kind of love relationship here between Blackthorn and Marco. Brian, are you guys both just more into the political intrigue stuff, the Game of Thrones-ness of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think for me that's definitely the draw, and I know that, based on the promos and how the story's going, they're really leading us to, an all-out war, like, a huge Toranaga army, all that kind of thing.
And the action sequences have been phenomenal so far. I did want to say that. I don't think we've touched on that. Like, the fight scenes have been really cool, different. They
feel really deadly.
Yeah, they're not long drawn out Jason Bourne, super hyper choreographed stuff. It's just like literally like sword.
It's like a real fight.
Slash, boom. Yeah, it's messy. So it's cool. All right, Brian, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I would love to see another like middle of the head slice of a random dude on the street. Like when that happened,
Brutal.
Your jaw kind of drops.
Yeah,
like, I hope they lead into that level of lethality in this 1600s world, right? Like samurai swords should not be, just like mere random weapons in a battle. They should appear super deadly. But having said that, and with like this impending war to come, I hope the show, actually leans away from that, and that the twists and resolutions in the show actually come more from, the behind closed doors, people doing dirty things. I don't know if there are more assassins in play, but I'd rather see that version of the story and those other regions getting more play. And, us learning a little bit more about who are the other players in this version of Japan, and what are their motivations. I would love for all of that to be explored rather than just, okay, we're following the drumbeat of Tokunaga, getting his army ready, and now he's gonna march on Osaka. Like, that sort of feels a little bit more straightforward and cliche to me, and I'm hoping that they go for something more nuanced.
Do you think they could make us sympathize with these other leaders?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Right? Why part of it is, why should any of the regents even care about the heir? And we didn't even talk about why the show is called Shogun. Apparently before the emperor, there was just like one warlord that ruled over Japan, and I think Toranaga is part of that bloodline. And so, is this story really more about Toranaga rising as the next shogun? Um, and so if that's the case, then yeah, like, the other houses we should be a little bit more sympathetic to their causes too, maybe.
Yeah. Sav, anything you're hoping for?
I think honestly, I'm gonna build off what Brian said. I mean, I just want to see how they can make me care about these other characters. Lots of people to dislike. What can you do to make them more human? What can you do to make their motives more complex? What can you do to where I might not still like this character, but I understand where they're coming from in a way where I hate them, but I like watching to see what they're gonna do next. And I do think that the more antagonists that they've set up in this show have that potential, but I don't want them to just be one dimensional. Oh, they're trying to kill your boy and overthrow and get power. Cool, they're jerks. I don't like them. That's it. Like, I want there to be, I want them to fail, but I don't. I want to have complicated feelings. I want to be conflicted, saying, "Oh man, I'm not sure how I feel about this situation," rather than, "Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I like this," which has kind of been where it's been so far. But again, the big conflict has still yet to pop off. There's a lot of conflict to pop off. So, obviously when the war really pops off and things get bloody, that is when things get more complicated. So as long as they give me that. And I was reading, I didn't know the actor who plays, oh my God, these names are beating my ass right now. Toranaga. I didn't know he's actually one of the executive producers for the show too. And
really?
he apparently I was reading it, I found like an article where he talked a lot about the authenticity and how in Japan the show has been well received for its authenticity. So actually, and this is a bigger picture thing, but I'm liking that we're kind of having a renaissance, I think, of historical shows leaning into the authenticity piece rather than just the, hey, we want to use this set piece to tell a cool looking story. I feel like there's been more of an emphasis on, we can tell a cool story and an honest, authentic story at the same time. And so if the show is being, obviously I'm not Japanese, I'm not an expert in Eastern culture, but if the show is made by like people from Japan and it's being well received in the country and they're going all in on just the Japanese actors and translations and on-site filming, that to me is encouraging to know as like an outside viewer, a lot of what you're seeing has a lot of historical accuracy baked in, because that's always been very important to me. I've always taken issue with historical shows that then purposely ignore the history in order to tell a more Hollywood story. I've always found that to be disingenuous to real events and the people who live them. So granted, again, there's a fictional element to this show, but them being very representative of what Japanese culture was at the time and what customs look like is, I always like just seeing cultures that are my own and knowing that this is being done very authentically. Again, just makes me appreciate the show, and I can watch these scenes with a little bit more investment, saying, hey, I'm learning a little bit, not just scratching my entertainment itch.
Yeah. I don't know if we're gonna get that level of complication or gray areas in our characters in this show. I kind of feel like no. I think what you're saying is right, that like so far a lot of characters have been fairly one note or like fairly understandable in terms of what they're doing, but we'll see. I think of all the characters that could end up that way, I think Toranaga is probably the one that lends himself the most to end up being complicated. In maybe the same way that Paul Atreides that we talked about in our last show was kind of complicated, right? Like if he starts to take over and starts to round up power, he's going to actually end up coming up against the Taiko's son, about the former emperor's son, right? Like he's going to have to figure out, how do I take over? And the emperor's son is seen as like the legitimate next ruler, right? So if he's going to take over, does he have to kill the kid? Does he have to get him on his side? Like, what does he have to do to make that happen? Sounds like in this era, it sounds like everybody needs to be killed in order for them to be actually taken off the board. So that puts him at odds with his care for, obviously he has care for the kid. So that'll be interesting. If you had to be an explorer lost in a new land, a foreign land, a land you've never been to, which land would it be? Brian, where are you going to end up on your Lost Voyage piracy tour?
If I had to be captured for a little bit, but then like able to run loose and kind of hang with the folks in charge, I think it would be. Okay. I think it'd be the Shire. Yeah, I would definitely go to the Shire.
You just want to be tall.
I'd be like, I'd be like 2 to 3 times everyone's height, and like they would look at me. They wouldn't be able to do anything but look up at me, and I would just feel like all powerful. I'd totally be cool with that, and we'd just be busy eating, drinking beer, and maybe smoking a little pipe weed.
Hey,
and
little fireworks shows.
Yeah, fireworks shows. Some very non-threatening hijinks. Stealing a carrot from the farm, whatever.
So are you integrating?
I think that would be okay.
Are you integrating or are you colonizing?
A little of both.
What? No,
sure.
You can't do both. One is different than the other.
I'm taking in the culture of the Shire.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm just tall. Like in that world, I'm just tall, and that means power. And I think people will definitely have me over to help do them favors in their tallest cupboard, and those favors will be repaid.
All right.
That's what I think. Why?
You're a monster. Wait, Sav, we can't hear you again. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. Finally, someone understands height is power. And that's why I need to be that's why I need to be the new permanent host. And and it's time for me. It's time for a new era.
Sav,
Age of Savon.
You're taking your ship out. Where are you landing?
Oof. Dang. I'm trying to give a not problematic answer because last time we had a question like this. Yeah, because last time we had a question like this, you edited my answer out. When I wanted to have a house elf. Edited it. Yeah, he said, "What do you want for Christmas?" I said, "I want a house elf," and he edited that out because like, oh, it's not appropriate. Like, well, you asked.
You answered. That was the problem. It wasn't the question.
A little bit of both. I think what is a society where I could would I have all my current knowledge?
I guess so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's no reason unless you land on Amnesia Island.
I'm trying to think what's the least racist place that I could come in and then leverage my knowledge to just become a god. What's an isolated?
You go back in time.
What's an isolated island nation that I could just come up there and just flex knowing things?
I don't know. Pick one.
I don't want to.
Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island. There you go.
You know what? F it. Put me in the lands of Narnia. It's a little too Judeo-Christian for my taste, but it seems pretty chill. They got the Turkish delight, talking animals, Lion Jesus. It seems pretty chill there.
Lion Jesus.
Let me vibe out. Yeah,
right.
You never read Chronicles of Narnia? Jesus. You never read Chronicles of Narnia?
It's been a long time if I have.
Aslan the Lion was an allegory for Jesus. He literally dies and comes back. It was pretty... It was pretty ham-fisted, even for a 12-year-old, 11-year-old me. I'm like, is that supposed to be Jesus? I think it's
yeah.
But yeah, put me in Narnia. That seems like a pretty chill place
to
live
to Narnia,
outside the White Witch. But
you could
get it
through the wardrobe. It's gonna be great.
I just like the idea of going through some wardrobe. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically what I took this question to mean was, where do you want to travel to? And I want to go to Switzerland. I just want to drive those beautiful like those mountain roads. I want to see like just these like just awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping landscapes where you see like mountains right next to valleys and little villages. Maybe a little skiing, maybe a little biking happening. So if I just got dropped in some foreign land that I'm not familiar with and don't know anything about, I'm going to Switzerland. I would not colonize Switzerland. I would just be there as a visitor, hanging out with all the people and enjoying their great culture if they have any. I don't really know, but it seems like they got chocolate. That's what people say. I don't love chocolate, but I'd be trying some Swiss chocolate. I know they got cheese because it's got holes in it. So Switzerland, it seems like that's the place to be. And honestly, this answer
it's got holes in it.
This answer is kind of inspired by
my
Top
mind is
Gear.
going somewhere real bad with that.
Yikes! No,
Anyway.
Brian, don't do it.
I hate both of you.
Top Gear is this car show, and one of the episodes from maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they did a road trip in like some really cool cars through Switzerland, and the scenes that they were in and the places that they found to like drive through just seemed like totally epic. I would be just enjoying myself out there. I think rent me a car. I don't even have to rent a car. I don't know. It doesn't have to be a car trip. I just want to see Switzerland. It's beautiful, gorgeous looking.
It's a beautiful place. I must say, beautiful
You've been.
Place. I've been. I've eaten the
recommend
chocolate. I've eaten the cheese. I climbed the mountain.
Hey,
And Anna and I actually went to a spa that was created out of a former brewery. So we were just basically in what used to be giant vats, which are now like hot sauna or a hot spa pools.
Oh, interesting.
So I got to even experience what it's like to be a hop in beer. So that was lovely, and I highly recommended it.
a hop, just a singular hop.
A singular hop, not
Yeah.
Together with Anna, we were hops. So.
2 hops. All right, sounds good. Friends, that'll do it. Hit us up on @confidently_pod on Instagram. Tell us what you think of this show so far. Not our show. Well, you can tell us what you think of our show, but mostly what you think of Shogun on Hulu FX, starring, who was it? What's his name again? Oh no, I lost it.
Cosmo Jarvis.
Well, way to lose all the momentum in the
Are we talking
outro.
about
Anyways,
Dogen?
it doesn't matter.
I don't know Dogen's real name.
All right, friends, we're out of here. See you later. Bye. Happy spring break.
Sayonara.